The call came before my last shift before Thanksgiving. Mom said, "Don't come this year. Your manual labor will embarrass your sister's new boyfriend." I just said, "I understand," and hung up. I thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, my entire family was pounding on my door. When the polished man behind them saw me, he froze, then said my name like he'd just met someone famous. We grew up in Maple Grove, in a 2-story house with a white picket fence that was always freshly painted. From the street, it was perfect. A clipped green lawn, seasonal wreaths on the door, a minivan in the driveway. It was the American dream, rendered in beige siding. But inside, our house operated on a system as rigid and unspoken as a circuit diagram. My name is Mara Ellison. I am 30 years old, and I am an industrial electrician. The metal rung of the ladder was cold against my thighs, a sharp line of pressure even through the heavy canvas of my work pants. I was perched 20 feet above the concrete floor of a warehouse, retrofitting a lighting grid for an upcoming music show. My hands, stained with carbon dust and the metallic tang of hot wiring, were busy connecting a heavy-gauge cable. The air smelled of ozone, old dust, and the faint, sharp scent of solder. Below me, the stage was a dark square, waiting for the light I was about to give it. My phone vibrated. I froze, balancing carefully. The vibration was against my collarbone, where I'd tucked the phone into the bib of my overalls. Reaching in with one gloved hand, I fumbled for it, almost dropping a wrench. I pressed it between my shoulder and my ear, clamping it there. The screen, cracked and smeared with grease, glowed with one word: Mom. A small, stupid smile touched my lips. It was automatic. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. This was the call. This was the call where she would ask what kind of pie I was bringing, or if I could come early to help her wrestle with the ancient, finicky oven I'd rewired for her 3 years prior. "Hey, Mom. Bad time. I'm on a ladder," I said, my voice slightly muffled. The sound of a drill echoed from the other side of the warehouse. "Mara? Honey?" Her voice was strange. It was too polite. It was the voice she used for church acquaintances or the neighbors she didn't like. "Oh, dear. Are you working? On that stage thing?" "Just finishing up the main grid," I said, my fingers finding the terminal screw by feel. "What's up? You need me to pick up the turkey?" There was a pause. Not a warm, comfortable pause. It was a cold, empty space on the line. I stopped tightening the screw. "Actually, honey," she began, and the politeness sharpened. "We were just calling to let you know. This year, we're just keeping things small." I held my breath. The word small hung in the air, tasting like metal. "Small?" I repeated. "What do you mean? Is someone sick?" "Oh, no. Everyone is fine. It's just, well, Brielle is bringing her new boyfriend home. Logan. I think we told you about him. He's in finance. Very successful." I knew where this was going. I knew it with the same certainty that I knew a red wire was live. The sinking, cold feeling in my stomach was the same one I got right before tripping a major breaker. "Okay," I said slowly. "So, you want me to be on my best behavior? I won't talk about junction boxes. I promise." I tried to make it a joke, but my voice was flat. "Mara." Her voice lost its forced lightness and became tense. His family is very prominent. Mara, it's all about image. You understand image?" I did. I understood that image was why Brielle's communication degree was framed in the living room, while my master electrician license was in a drawer in my workshop. "And," she continued, "Brielle is trying to build a certain sophisticated image. She's worked very hard on it." "Mom, what are you trying to say?" I asked, though I already had the blueprint for this disaster in my head. "We just think it would be better if you didn't come this year." The drill on the other side of the warehouse stopped. The silence that rushed in was absolute, broken only by the high-pitched, insistent buzz of a single, old fluorescent light in the corner. "You're uninviting me?" "We aren't," Uninviting you. Mara, don't be dramatic. We are just adjusting the guest list. Your line of work, the grease, the overalls with paint on them, your work boots. She listed them like they were crimes. It would make him uncomfortable. It would make Brielle uncomfortable. We don't want any distractions. I looked down at my hands. The gloves were worn through at the fingertips. The skin beneath was calloused and clean, but the nails were permanently rimmed with grime that no brush could reach. I looked at my boots, caked in drywall dust and something oily. The tools on my belt weighed me down, a familiar, comforting pressure on my hips. I asked the question, my voice barely a whisper. Are you saying I embarrass you? She sighed, a long, impatient sound that I knew better than her laugh. Mara, why do you have to make everything so difficult? This isn't about you. This is about your sister's future. She's finally found someone wonderful. We just want one, single, perfect day. Is that so much to ask? It's not about me. The words echoed. It's not about me. I thought of the Thanksgiving, 5 years ago, when the main power line to their neighborhood had snapped in an ice storm. I had spent 4 hours in the freezing rain, bypassing their panel with a generator I kept at my shop, just so they could cook their perfect turkey, while Brielle complained that the generator was too loud for her movie. I thought of all the photos on their mantelpiece, Brielle at prom, Brielle at graduation, Brielle on vacation. There was one photo of me, from when I was 10, with a missing front tooth. I was an afterthought, a ghost in the family machine, only noticed when a gear broke. No, Mom, I said. My voice was hollow. That's not too much to ask. Oh, good. I knew you'd understand. You've always been the practical one. Practical. That was the word for me. Not smart, not beautiful, not brilliant. Practical. The human wrench. I have to go, I said. This light isn't going to fix itself. Of course, honey. Well, you have a good day off, then. I thumbed the screen, ending the call. I didn't move for a full minute, maybe longer. I just hung there, 20 feet in the air, my safety harness digging into my shoulders. The world hadn't ended. There was no explosion. It was a quiet earthquake, the kind that doesn't knock buildings down, but shifts the foundation 6 inches to the left, so nothing will ever line up again. The buzzing from the fluorescent light seemed to get louder, a tiny, insistent drill whining directly into my brain, mocking me. I finally finished the connection. I tightened the last screw. I tested the line. The stage below me flooded with brilliant, clean, white light, a perfect, controlled illumination. I had been forgotten before, left at school pickup when I was 9. My name skipped in my father's toast at my parents' 25th anniversary party. But this was different. This wasn't being overlooked. This was a formal, deliberate exclusion. This was a judgment. My life, my work, my hands, they were officially labeled shameful. I packed my tools in silence, my movements methodical. Each wrench clicked into its slot. Each coil of wire was tied off. I descended the ladder, my boots hitting the concrete with a flat, final sound. The drive back to my workshop was a blur. The cold, late November air of Westbridge whipped past my truck window. The mountains were purple in the fading light. I kept seeing flashes of my life, all of it suddenly relit, under the harsh, ugly light of my mother's words. Me, at 14, rewiring the attic fan because Dad said it was a good project for me. Me, at 19, patching the roof in a rainstorm because a contractor was too expensive. Me, just last month, paying their overdue electric bill online from my office, so they wouldn't have to be embarrassed by a shut-off notice. All those acts of service, all those times I had been their useful daughter, they weren't acts of love. I saw that now. They were rent. They were the price I paid to be allowed in the house, and this year, the price had gone up, and I had been defaulted on. "You will embarrass us," was the final invoice. I pulled up to Iron Ridge Workshop. It wasn't much, just a rented cinderblock garage on the industrial side of town. But it was mine. The sign I'd painted myself was peeling. but the lights inside, the ones I'd strung, were warm. I went inside and didn't turn on the main lights. I walked through the darkness, past the drill press and the heavy-duty coil winder. I went to my office, a small cube of drywall I'd built in the corner. I sat at my desk. The only light came from the small, battery-powered work lamp I kept there. It cast long shadows across the schematics pinned to the wall. I was alone, completely. I reached for the main breaker panel on the wall behind my desk. I opened the metal door. All the switches were lined up, neat and orderly. I flipped them, one by one. Clack, clack, clack. Each one cut power to a different part of the shop, plunging the building into a deeper, more profound darkness. I sat there in the absolute black, the silence of my workshop a heavy blanket. I was officially out, exiled from the warmth of the family table. But as my eyes adjusted, the single beam of my little flashlight on the desk seemed to grow brighter. It cut a sharp, clear cone through the dark. I stared into it, and a thought, cold and clear as the beam itself, formed in my mind. Maybe being kicked out of their perfect picture was the only way I could ever step into my own. Maybe being told I wasn't welcome at their table was the permission I needed to finally build one for myself. We grew up in Maple Grove, in a 2-story house with a white picket fence that was always freshly painted. From the street, it was perfect, a clipped green lawn, seasonal wreaths on the door, a minivan in the driveway. It was the American dream, rendered in beige siding. But inside, our house operated on a system as rigid and unspoken as a circuit diagram. There was my father, Grant Collins, the patriarch who believed his paycheck entitled him to silence after 5 p.m., my mother, Diane Collins, the chief executive of our family's image, whose primary metric of success was the envy of her neighbors, my younger sister, Brielle, the star, the golden child, the one whose future was the family's joint project. And then there was me. I was the spare part, the utility. I learned my function early. I was 9 years old, and the outlet in the living room had sparked, leaving a black, acrid smear on the wallpaper. My mother was frantic, not because the house might burn down, but because she couldn't plug in the vacuum before her book club arrived. "Grant, you have to fix it," she had hissed at my father. He didn't look up from the football game on television. "I'll call a guy on Monday. It's the weekend." Monday? The carpet is a mess. I went to the garage. I got the toolbox. I'd been taking apart old radios for 2 years. I knew how wires worked. I went to the basement, found the breaker box, and flipped the main. In the sudden quiet of the house, I pulled the plate off the wall. The problem was obvious: a loose connection. The wire insulation brittle and cracked from heat. It was an easy fix. I cut the wire, stripped it clean with my father's tool, and fastened it securely to the new outlet I found in his miscellaneous drawer. I screwed the plate back on. I went and flipped the breaker. Back in the living room, my mother plugged in the vacuum. It roared to life. She let out a sigh of pure relief and started running it over the carpet, the high-pitched whine filling the house. My father glanced over, his eyes tracking the game but his focus on me. "Huh, look at that," he said. He gave me a half smile, a rare thing. "At least you're useful." My 9-year-old heart had swelled. It was a strange, thin warmth, like holding your hands over a heating vent. It wasn't the blazing fire of love I saw him give Brielle when she got an A on a spelling test, but it was something. It was validation, and it had a condition. I was useful. Therefore, I had value. That set the precedent for the next 2 decades. Our house was a museum dedicated to Brielle. The living room mantel was crowded with her debate trophies, their little gold figures striking dramatic poses. Her dance recital photos lined the hallway, a progression of satin and tulle. Her honor roll certificates were framed, hung in a neat, ascending line up the staircase, each one a testament to her brilliance. My contributions were invisible. They were the absence of problems. The toilet that didn't run all night, the garage door that didn't squeak, the furnace that didn't fail on the coldest night of the year, the leaky pipe under the sink that I fixed with a wrench, and 3 hours of my Saturday, a repair that was only acknowledged with a Well, it's about time. My achievements weren't achievements. They were chores. They were maintenance. Brielle's work was to be admired. My work was to be expected. My mother's introductions at parties and neighborhood barbecues made the hierarchy painfully clear. She would pull Brielle forward, her hand splayed on her back in a gesture of presentation. This is our Brielle. She's the future of the family. She's studying communications. She just has a way with words. She'll be on television one day. I just know it. Everyone would coo, and Brielle would give her practiced, polished smile. Then my mother would motion to me, usually standing by the food, fixing a wobbly leg on the catering table or trying to get a faulty patio light to stay on. And this is my oldest, Phoebe. She's good with her hands, a real tomboy, saves us a fortune on repairs. We don't know what we'd do without her. It was meant to be a compliment, but what I heard, what everyone heard, was, this is our star, and this is our tool. The divide was cemented the year I turned 16. It was time to talk about college. We all sat at the kitchen table, a rare, formal family meeting. My father laid out the finances. They had a college fund, a respectable one, saved over many years. We think, my mother said, placing her hand over Brielle's, that we should put all of it toward Brielle's education. She's looking at private universities. You see, communications is a very competitive field. It requires a certain polish, the right connections. I looked at my father. He just nodded, his face set, as if this was the most logical business decision in the world. It's the smart investment. Phoebe, her potential is obvious. We see a real return there. I waited for them to say what was left for me. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of the kitchen clock. And me? I finally asked. My father looked at me, and his expression softened into something almost kind. Something I dreaded more than his anger. It was his, let's be practical look. You're smart, Phoebe's, but you're not academic. You're like me. You're practical. A girl like you is better off with a trade, something stable. You won't have to worry about all that student debt. It was a judgment, delivered as fatherly advice. A girl like me. He was drawing the blueprint for my life, and the ceiling was about 8 feet high. He was telling me my future was in fixing things, not in building them. Brielle got the private university. I got the Westbridge Community College pamphlet, left on my pillow like a consolation prize. I was hurt, deeply, but I was also, in a strange, secret part of myself, relieved. The pressure to compete with Brielle, a race I was never equipped to win, was over. I was officially on a different track. So, I took their advice. I leafed through the pamphlet, my eyes skipping past the general studies and landing on a course catalog for industrial trades. I saw electrical engineering technology. I signed up for a night class. Secretly, I didn't tell them. I used money I'd saved from fixing neighbors' lawnmowers. It was the first thing that was just for me. And in that brightly lit classroom, surrounded by wiring diagrams and conductor ampacity charts, I found a language I finally understood. The flow of electrons was logical. Physics didn't have favorites. A circuit was either complete or it was broken. It was honest. It was clean. It made sense in a way my family never did. I got my first job at Silverline Electrical, an old-school contracting company run by a guy named Sal. On my first day, he looked at my small frame and then at the 40-foot pole we were meant to service. He just grunted, "Don't drop anything." He had me climbing that pole to service a transformer within the hour. It was terrifying, and it was the most alive I had ever felt, hanging from a harness, high above the ground with the whole of Westbridge spread out below me. I learned that trusting my safety gear, trusting the laws of physics, was so much easier than trusting the shifting, arbitrary rules of my family's emotions. Up there, I was just a qualified technician. My work was all that mattered. Now, lying on the lumpy sofa in my small apartment above the workshop, the uninvited call plays over and over in my head. That call wasn't a sudden betrayal. It wasn't a new development. It was just the first time they'd said the quiet part out loud. All those years of being useful were just a long audition, and I had finally failed it. My father's words from that kitchen table echo back to me. Someone like you just needs stable work. It wasn't protection, it was a cage. They had defined my limits so they wouldn't have to share their resources, so they wouldn't have to see me as anything other than their on-call mechanic. I was the family's structural support, the load-bearing wall, the one who kept the lights on so Brielle could shine, and now, the image of me, the practical, greasy-handed daughter, was a liability. The tool had become an embarrassment. The golden child had found a golden man, and the spare part was being hidden in the shed. I stared up at the ceiling of my apartment. I'd wired it myself. I'd installed recessed LED lighting, all on a dimmer switch. I loved those lights. They were reliable. They did exactly what I asked them to do, every single time. Their glow was steady and true. A cold, hard question surfaced in my mind, cutting through the years of quiet resentment. If I was born into this family to be useful, not to be loved, what exactly did I owe them? What did I owe the people who only saw me as a high-functioning tool, and who, at the first sign of social inconvenience, had just declared that tool obsolete? I laid there in the dark, the quiet hum of the breaker panel in the next room, the only sound. For the first time, I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel broken. I felt a strange, cold clarity. They used me more than they loved me. So what did I owe them? The answer came back, simple and quiet. Nothing. Iron Ridge Workshop didn't start as much of anything. 5 years ago, it was just a 20 by 20 foot corner of a defunct textile warehouse, a space I rented with cash. The roof leaked, and I shared a single, sputtering fluorescent light with a guy who repaired antique motorcycles. I did my paperwork on a folding card table, wearing gloves in the winter. But I saved every dollar I made from side jobs, every bit of overtime from Silverline Electrical. I saved. I learned to read contracts. I learned about commercial mortgages. 2 years ago, I walked into a bank with a business plan that was 50 pages long, detailed down to the projected cost of copper wire versus aluminum for the next 3 fiscal quarters. I got a small business loan. I bought the whole damn warehouse. Now, Iron Ridge is my territory, my sanctuary. The leaky roof is fixed, insulated, and lined with solar panels I installed myself. The vast, open floor is divided into a fabrication area, a secure storage cage for high-value gear, and my office. I found my niche. It wasn't residential. I didn't want to argue with homeowners about the color of outlet covers. I was drawn to the big problems, the complex, high-stakes jobs. I specialize in temporary power and lighting design for live events, and electrical retrofits for historic buildings. It's a world where failure is not an option. When you are powering a live broadcast, or a stage with 100 moving lights and a band playing to 10,000 people, the power cannot fail. The math has to be perfect. The work has to be flawless. My family has no idea. To them, electrician means I change fuses. They don't understand load calculations, transformer balancing, or the art of running 2,000 amps of temporary power into a building that was designed for gas lamps. In this world, I am not Phoebe Collins. Early on, I noticed the way clients would second-guess me, the way they'd look over my shoulder for the real boss. So I created a shield. I branded all my technical work, all my bids, under a name, PSC Systems. It was professional. It was anonymous. It was just initials. It forced people to judge the work, the blueprint, the result, and the results were good. PC Systems started to get a reputation among event producers and venue managers. PC Systems was reliable. Peace Systems was safe. Peace Systems could do the jobs that other contractors were afraid to touch. About a year ago, I got my breakout gig. It was an indoor music festival called Luminous Harbor, held in the long-abandoned West Bridge Central Train Terminal. The challenge was immense. The producers wanted to hang 20 tons of lighting and video screens from a 70-foot ceiling. in a building with no modern power infrastructure. It was a logistical nightmare. I spent a month just designing the power grid. I brought in 3 separate generators, synchronized them, and built a temporary substation from the ground up, running thick, heavy feeder cables through old service tunnels. The festival went off without a single flicker. The light show was spectacular, and videos of it went viral within the event production community. The first question every producer asked was, "Who did the power and lighting design?" The answer that came back was, "A firm called PRC Systems." A trade magazine, Live Production Weekly, tracked me down. They wanted an interview. I was nervous, but I agreed. I talked to a reporter, on the phone, about load-in procedures and redundancy systems. They ran a 2-page article. I still have it, tucked in my desk drawer. The headline was, "The Ghost Electrician Behind the Brightest Shows." I bought an extra copy and brought it to my parents' house. I left it on the kitchen counter. "Hey, Mom, that article I mentioned? It came out." She glanced at the cover, which featured a complex shot of the luminous harbor rigging. "Oh, honey, that's nice. Did you see? Brielle made the Dean's List again. They put her picture in the Maple Grove Gazette." The Gazette was on the fridge, held up by a glittery magnet Brielle had made in grade school. My magazine was eventually moved to the recycling pile. Unread, my name was PC Systems. My name was Ghost. My family, it turned out, couldn't even see me. Which brings me to today, the day after the uninvited call. I am sitting in my office at Iron Ridge. My office, the walls are covered in schematics, blueprints for the theater job, diagrams for a historic hotel ballroom, a calendar marked up with load-in dates and inspection schedules, photos of my small crew, grinning and covered in grime after a successful wrap, are tacked to a corkboard. This is my life, a complete, functioning, profitable life that exists entirely outside my family's radar. My phone rings. It's not Mom. The caller ID is for a big production company downtown. "PC Systems. This is Phoebe speaking." "Phoebe, thank God I got you," a stressed voice says. "This is Mark from Apex Events. We're producing the Sterling Heights Gala, the big annual fundraiser." "I know the one. It's the biggest philanthropic event in the city." "I know the event. Mark, what's the problem?" "The problem," he groans, "is the Sterling Heights Hotel. It's 110 years old. It's beautiful. But the wiring is a joke. We're bringing in a live band, a broadcast truck for the local news, full catering kitchens, and a lighting package that could land a plane. The hotel's engineer just told me we'd be lucky to run a toaster without blowing a fuse." I smile, leaning back in my chair. "So you need a temporary power distribution system, a big one." "I don't just need a system, Phoebe. I need you. I need PC Systems. The folks at Luminous Harbor said you're the only one in the state who can do this right. The board is terrified of a blackout. It would be a catastrophe. Can you do it? Please tell me you're available." It's a huge job. It's challenging. It's exactly the kind of work I love. "Send me the tech riders and the venue specs. Mark, I'll look at it today." An hour later, the email arrives. It's a massive file. I spend the afternoon mapping out power requirements, calculating generator needs, sketching out cable runs that won't interfere with guest flow. It's a beautiful, complex problem. I'm in my element. I draft a proposal, attach my insurance and license, and I'm about to hit send. Then I scroll to the bottom of the contract, to the list of event partners and coordinators. My eyes freeze on a single line. PR and Media Coordination, Radiant Vista Media, Lead Coordinator, Brielle Collins. I stop. My hand hovers over the mouse. Radiant Vista Media. That's the name of the PR firm Brielle started, funded, I now realize, by my parents diverting practical money away from me. This is it. This is the event. The one with the prominent finance industry boyfriend. The event that requires a sophisticated image. The event that I am too greasy and embarrassing to even attend as a family member. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. My sister is in charge of the image of an event that, without my embarrassing manual labor, would literally be in the dark. The entire spectacle she's planning, the glamorous night she's pinning her career on, will be secretly powered by the sister she just banished. My first instinct is to delete the email, to tell Mark I'm unavailable. But then I look around my office, at my name on the wall. This isn't a family favor. This is my business. This is the work I have built, in the dark. While they were all admiring Brielle's shine, I am not the ghost electrician for nothing. I type out my reply. Mark, the plan looks challenging, but entirely feasible. My proposal is attached. PC, systems would be happy to take this on. I hit send. A strange feeling settles over me. It's not revenge. Not yet. It's the cold, clean feeling of a circuit clicking into place. The machine is in motion. I wonder what will happen when all these wires, so carefully kept separate, finally cross. A few days later, just before the Thanksgiving I am not invited to, I send off the final, complex blueprint for the temporary power distribution. It's a work of art, detailing every transformer, every cable run, every panel. It's a high-wire act of engineering, and I sign it with my business name. I know that, in the background, in accounting departments and production meetings. That name will be on every important document. The approval comes back within an hour. A simple, approved budget signed off from the event's finance committee. It's CC'd to several people, the event producer, the hotel manager, and the primary financial partner for the gala. The contact name reads, Logan Pierce, Senior VP, Northline Capital. I stare at the name, Logan Pierce, the finance boyfriend, the man I am not fit to meet, the man whose prominent family must be protected from my dirty work boots. He just personally approved my 6-figure budget. I close the email. For the first time in days, I smile. A real, cold, and very clear smile. He doesn't know my face. He doesn't know my family. He only knows my work, and he just paid for it. That night, after signing the contract for the Sterling Heights Gala, I sat in my office for a long time. The anger from my mother's call had cooled, leaving something hard and clear in its place. I had my work. I had my name, the one I had built for myself. I had a 6-figure contract approved by the very man I was supposed to be a stain on. But the wind felt hollow. I looked out the office window into the vast, dark cavern of the workshop. It was silent, empty. My tools were all neatly put away, my fabrication tables clear. And it was 2 days until Thanksgiving. I was still uninvited. I was still, in the eyes of my family, the embarrassing secret. I had this entire, huge space, all to myself, and I was going to spend the holiday alone in my apartment, eating takeout and watching reruns, while my family played perfect for a man who respected my work more than they did. Why? The question was simple. Why was I accepting that? I was staring at a 2,500 square foot space. It was warm, it was powered, and it was mine. My mother had told me I wasn't welcome at her table. She never said I couldn't build my own. A new idea, a different kind of blueprint, started to form in my mind. It wasn't about revenge. It was about ballast. It was about building something real to counteract the fiction they were living in. I grabbed my phone. I didn't have a large social circle. My work was too demanding. But I knew people like me, people who were also on the outside. My first thought was of Mr. Hank, my neighbor at my apartment. He was a retired mailman in his late 70s, a widower. His kids lived in California. I'd seen him through his window last Thanksgiving, sitting in his armchair, watching television with a frozen dinner on a tray table. It had made my chest ache. I thought of Andre and Melissa. They lived in the apartment across the hall, a young couple, both servers at a high-end restaurant downtown. They worked impossible hours. I knew for a fact they were both scheduled for a double on Thanksgiving Day. They'd be lucky to grab a staff meal between shifts. And I thought of the kids. Twice a month, I volunteered at the local youth center. It was mostly for at-risk teens, kids from broken homes or the foster system. I ran a basic life skills workshop. I taught them how to wire an outlet safely, how to patch drywall, how to check a car's oil. Most of them had never had anyone show them how to do anything practical. Most of them, I knew, had no family dinner to go to. They had nowhere to be. I opened my text messages. I started a group chat with Andre, Melissa, and a few of the other service folks I knew. The message was simple. Hey guys, short notice, but I'm hosting a Thanksgiving for anyone who doesn't have a place to be. It's at my workshop, Iron Ridge, on the industrial side. It will be warm. There will be a ton of food and some music. No dress code. Seriously, come in your work uniform. Come in your pajamas. Nobody cares. Let me know. Then I texted the coordinator at the youth center. Hey Brenda, it's Phoebe. Any of your older kids without plans for Thursday? I'm hosting at my shop. They're all welcome. I can come pick them up. Finally, I walked across the street and knocked on Mr. Hank's door. He opened it, looking surprised. Phoebe, everything all right? Everything's great. Hank, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? His face fell, just a little. Oh, the kids are busy. I'll probably just watch the game. Cook a small hen. No, you're not, I said. You're coming to my place, my workshop. I'm cooking, 7 o'clock, and I need you to be in charge of telling old stories. A slow smile spread across his face. Well, I can do that. I can certainly do that. The next day, I didn't feel like an exile. I felt like a host. I went to the warehouse club, the one where you buy everything in overwhelming bulk. I pushed a giant flatbed cart through the aisles, past families arguing over brands. I felt a pang, a quick, sharp jab of what I was missing. Then I saw a young guy, clearly a line cook, still in his checkered pants, stocking up on energy drinks. He looked as tired as I felt most days. I nodded at him. He nodded back. We were part of a different club. I bought 2 20-pound turkeys, a 50-pound bag of potatoes, more butter than I had ever seen in one place, cans of pumpkin, bags of green beans, aluminum roasting pans the size of my truck's hubcaps. As I loaded the heavy bags into my truck, my mother's voice was in my head. Manual labor isn't something people respect. Phoebe. I looked at the cart. This was manual labor. It was heavy. It was necessary. And it was going to make about 20 people happy. I decided my mother was wrong. Back at Iron Ridge, the prep began. I had a small, functional kitchen in my apartment. But for this, I needed space. I set up a folding table in the workshop. I scrubbed my hands, tied my hair back, and started. I was a technician. This was just a different kind of system. Ingredients in, product out. While the turkeys brined in a massive cooler, I transformed the shop. I pushed my heavy tool carts and my drill press against the far wall. Covering them with clean drop cloths, I cleared the central floor. The space was huge and echoed. It needed warmth. I went to my storage cage and pulled out my event gear. I unspooled hundreds of feet of string lights, the ones with the warm, vintage-style Edison bulbs. I climbed my own ladder, stringing them from the steel rafters, crisscrossing the cavernous ceiling until the whole place was draped in a soft, golden canopy. For tables, I used my heavy-duty workbenches, supplemented by spools of high-voltage cable stood on end. I covered them all with cheap, clean, red and white checkered tablecloths. I set out mismatched chairs I'd borrowed from the youth center, alongside my own office chairs and a few folding ones. I set up a small sound system, just 2 speakers and my phone, and put on a playlist of quiet, classic country, Willie Nelson, Patsy Cline. In the corner, I set up my makeshift kitchen. I had a 2-burner hot plate and a countertop roaster oven I'd borrowed from Hank. As I peeled potatoes, my hands moving with practiced, efficient motions, I had a sudden realization. This was the first time in my life I was cooking for Thanksgiving because I wanted to, not because I had to. Every other year, I was my mother's prep cook. I was the one who peeled, who chopped, who lifted the heavy pot. I was the one who scrubbed the roasting pan at the end of the night, my hands raw, while everyone else watched football. I was helping her put on her show. This was not a show. This was just dinner. That night, They started to arrive right at 7. Andre and Melissa came first, still in their black and white server uniforms, looking exhausted but smiling. "Phoebe, this is amazing," Melissa said, looking up at the lights. "It feels magical." "You're a lifesaver," Andre added, handing me a bottle of cheap wine. We were going to have gas station sandwiches. Then Hank showed up, wearing a bow tie, carrying a pie. "My late wife's pecan recipe," he announced. "Figured I'd contribute to the cause." The kids from the center came in a group, shy and whispering at first, their eyes wide. They looked at the welding machine in the corner, at the huge drill press, like it was a museum. Soon, the shop was full. It was a strange, beautiful collection of people. My small work crew, a few other single tradespeople, the waiters, the old mailman, the teenagers, the air filled with the rich, deep smell of turkey and gravy and the sound of people laughing. It wasn't the quiet, tense, perfect dinner of my childhood. It was loud. It was messy. People were eating off paper plates because I didn't own 35 of anything. Hank was true to his word. He sat at the head of a workbench. A group of the teens gathered around him, telling a wild story about delivering mail in the blizzard of '92. They were hanging on his every word. One of the teens, a quiet kid named Marcus, who I'd been teaching to wire switches, came up to me, his plate piled high. "Phoebe," he said, his voice low. I used the thing you taught me. My foster mom's lamp was broken. I fixed the cord. I did it right. I checked it with the multimeter." "That's great. Marcus," I said, my throat suddenly tight. "That's really great." "Yeah," he said, puffing his chest out just a bit. "It was easy." Later, I saw Melissa, the server, standing by the wall, staring at one of the string light strands. She was gently adjusting a bulb. She saw me looking and blushed. "Sorry, this one was just bugging me." I laughed. "You're hired. You've got the eye." I stepped back. I stood in the shadow of my office doorway, holding a plastic cup of wine, and just watched. The warm light fell on all of them. Andre was showing Hank a picture on his phone. Marcus was in a deep conversation with one of my crew about motorcycles. The room was humming with life. This wasn't a room full of rejects. It was a room full of people who worked. People who, like me, were valued for what they did. This was not the Instagram perfect picture my mother was currently staging in Maple Grove. The tablecloths were plastic, the forks were plastic, but the smiles were real. The laughter was real. And I was not a spare part here. I was the hub. I was the one who had built the table, strung the lights, and brought the power. I wasn't in the background, fixing things so someone else could shine. I was the center of something good, all on my own. As the night wound down, people left in groups, all of them stopping to thank me. Andre and Melissa gave me a fierce hug. "You have no idea. Phoebe, thank you." The kids were the last to leave. As they piled into the van, Marcus hung back. He was a lanky 15-year-old who usually tried to act tough. He just stood in front of me for a second, looking at his feet. Then he suddenly wrapped me in a quick, tight hug. "This was the best Thanksgiving I've ever had," he mumbled into my shoulder. "Seriously, better than any house." He pulled away before I could respond and ran to the van. I stood in the massive, open doorway of my workshop, watching them drive away. The cold night air felt good on my face. When they were gone, I turned back inside. The shop was a mess. Paper plates, empty bottles, spilled gravy, but it was a good mess, a happy mess. I turned off the main work lights, leaving just the canopy of string lights I had hung from the rafters. They cast a warm, twinkling glow over the entire space. It was beautiful. I felt a light inside myself, something that had been flickering for a long time. Finally burned steady. It was brighter than any stage light I'd ever hung. While my workshop was filled with the warm, genuine noise of my new, makeshift family, another event was unfolding across town. The perfect Thanksgiving at Maple Grove. I didn't see it. Of course, I was busy carving a second turkey and listening to Hank's stories. But I got the full report later that night. long after my last guest had gone home and I was washing the last of the roasting pans. My phone, quiet all day, buzzed on the counter. It was my Aunt Ruth, my mother's younger sister. She was the only one in the family who ever seemed to see me as a person, not a function. "Phoebe," she said, her voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. "Hey, Aunt Ruth, happy Thanksgiving," I said, my voice tired but content. "Honey, I'm hiding in the pantry. I had to call you. Are you okay?" "I'm great, actually," I said, and I was surprised by how true it was. "I had a full house. How's dinner over there?" She let out a long, slow breath. "Phoebe, it is awful. Just awful. It's not at all like the pictures Brielle is posting. I can tell you that." I leaned against the counter, suddenly fascinated. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she whispered, "it's the most tense, staged, fake meal I have ever sat through. Your mother has the heat turned up so high it feels like a sauna, but the air in here is freezing. It's like a performance, a bad one." She painted the picture. The dining room table was set to perfection, with new placemats and a massive, elaborate centerpiece that Brielle kept adjusting. The new boyfriend. Logan was handsome, quiet, and looked, as Aunt Ruth put it, like he was wearing a very expensive, very uncomfortable sweater. "Your mother and father," she continued, "will not stop talking. They are on a loop. It's all about Logan's portfolio and Brielle's media contacts and the synergy of finance and public relations. They've barely let anyone else get a word in. Your Uncle Ben tried to talk about his new fishing boat, and your mother cut him off to ask Logan about the stock market. The stock market. Phoebe, on Thanksgiving." I winced. I could picture it perfectly. My mother's bright, brittle smile, my father's booming, self-important voice, Brielle, lapping it all up. "But then," Aunt Ruth said, her voice dropping even lower, "it happened." "What happened?" "Your Uncle Ben. You know him. No filter. He's trying to get the fireplace going, but the flu is stuck again, just like last year. He's muttering to himself, and then he just booms it out, right across the table. 'Hey, Diane, where's Phoebe? She's the only one who knows how to fix this blasted thing. She had it roaring in 2 minutes last year.'" I closed my eyes. I could feel the silence. "Oh, no," I breathed. "Oh, yes," Aunt Ruth confirmed. "Phoebe, you could have heard a pin drop. It was 3 solid seconds of absolute, dead quiet." Logan looked up from his plate. Brielle's face went white. "Your father just stared at his turkey. And your mother?" She paused. "Your mother laughed, a tiny, sharp, horrible little laugh, and she said, 'Oh, Ben, don't be silly. Phoebe's busy. She has a night shift at the shop. You know how it is, that kind of work.'" And the way she said shop, honey, it was like she was saying the sewer, just dripping with contempt. I felt the old, familiar sting, but it was distant now, dulled by the warmth of the evening I just had. What did the boyfriend do?" I asked, curious about the man who had signed my check. "That's the interesting part," Ruth said. "He just frowned, just a little one. He looked at your mother, then at Brielle, and he just frowned, like he'd tasted something bad. But he didn't say a word, and Brielle just jumped in and screeched, 'Oh, Daddy, tell Logan about your golf trip.' And the whole awful performance started right back up. I thanked her for the report. She told me she loved me and that something felt wrong about this. I told her I loved her too and not to worry about me. But the story didn't end in the pantry. According to Aunt Ruth, after dinner, she and Uncle Ben and a few of my other cousins were in the kitchen, cleaning up because my mother insisted on using the good china that couldn't go in the dishwasher. Uncle Ben, still grumpy about the fireplace, muttered to my aunt, "A night shift? On Thanksgiving? What, is she a security guard now? I thought she ran that business." And that's when, Aunt Ruth told me in a follow-up text, "Your cousin Mark said it," he said. "Business? I thought she just fixed things for them. Didn't she pay for their new roof last summer after that hailstorm? The kitchen, apparently, went silent all over again. The whispers had started, the narrative my parents had carefully built. Phoebe, the practical, slightly embarrassing, but useful daughter, was being cross-referenced with another, truer narrative. Phoebe, the family bank. Phoebe, the family savior. A few of my cousins, the ones I was still friendly with, started texting me. Cousin Mark. Hey, Phoebes, you okay? Aunt Diane was being weird about where you were. You sick? Cousin Sarah. Just left your parents. It was weird. Missed you. Everything good? I responded to them both with the simple, unvarnished truth. I didn't add drama. I didn't complain. I just stated the fact. Me. Hey, not sick. I wasn't invited this year. Mom said my job would embarrass Brielle's new boyfriend. So I hosted my own thing at the workshop. It was great. Hope you guys are good. That text was a torpedo. On my mother's side of the family, that simple, declarative sentence, I wasn't invited, was all it took. The whispers became a quiet, angry buzz. My mother's perfect hostess image, the one she'd spent 30 years curating, began to crack. She started getting texts. I know because Aunt Ruth, God bless her, forwarded me the ones she was part of in the family group chat. Aunt Carol. Diane, I just heard from Sarah. You uninvited Phoebe? Uncle Ben. I thought she was busy. You kicked your own daughter out of Thanksgiving? What the hell? Diane? Cousin Mark. That's messed up. Aunt Diane. After she fronted you guys the money for the roof? Meanwhile, Brielle, oblivious to the simmering resentment in the kitchen, was doing what she did best, PR. She posted a picture to her Instagram story, a beautifully filtered shot of the perfect table, candelabras glowing, wine glasses sparkling, the caption, "So thankful for a perfect, intimate family dinner, love you all." In the background of the shot, you could just see Logan. He was sitting next to her, but he was looking down at his phone, not at the camera. His smile, which I'm sure she'd commanded him to put on, was strained. It didn't reach his eyes. Aunt Ruth told me later that Logan had been getting texts all night, too, from his own mother. The family gossip had apparently jumped tracks, from my family to his, and the prominent, image-conscious matriarch of the Pierce family was, apparently, confused and concerned about the new girlfriend's family values. Overnight, the story took root and spread. The narrative of Phoebe the Shame had been completely overtaken by Phoebe the Martyr. People, my relatives, started remembering everything. Didn't Phoebe drive all the way from college to fix their wiring when the house almost failed inspection? I'm pretty sure she co-signed the loan for Grant's last car. She saved them from that electrical fire, and now they're ashamed of her? Because she's an electrician? The final, fatal blow to my mother's perfect holiday came the next morning, Friday. I wasn't there, but I heard the entire story from my father, much, much later. My paternal grandmother, Grant's mother, called the house. Grandma Collins is a woman of few words, and all of them are blunt. She is from old Colorado ranching stock. She does not understand image. She only understands work. My mother, already reeling from the texts from her own family, answered the phone. "Diane," my grandmother's gravelly voice said. There were no pleasantries. "I just got off the phone with Ruth. I'm hearing stories." "Oh, Mom Collins," my mother began, trying to spin it. "It's all a misunderstanding. Phoebe was just—" "Save it," my grandmother snapped. "Ruth told me you uninvited her, because of her job, because of her hands." My mother was silent. "Let me tell you something. Diane, my father was a mechanic. My husband, God rest his soul, built houses, Grant pushes paper, and that's fine. But you've got one child who knows how to do something, who knows how to build, how to fix, a daughter who can stand on her own 2 feet and make a living with her mind and her hands, and you're ashamed of her? My God, woman, if I had a daughter who could rewire a house, I'd be bragging about it to the whole damn city. Shame on you." And she hung up. That was it. The call from the matriarch. The final judgment. It wasn't just my mother's family. It was my father's. The entire image had shattered. The shame she had tried to push onto me had boomeranged back and hit her, square in the face. The silence in the Maple Grove house was, apparently, profound. My mother stared at the phone. Then she looked at my father, her face a mask of pale, shaking rage. She didn't yell. She spoke in a low, deadly hiss. "Grant, get your coat. We are going to that shop of hers. We are going to talk to her, right now." I was in my small kitchen, the one above the steel stairs that led down to the workshop floor. The morning light was gray, filtering through the high industrial windows. My back ached, a dull, happy soreness from hauling turkeys and moving tables and standing for hours, laughing. The smell of fresh coffee was just starting to fill the apartment. It was quiet. It was peaceful. Then, a sudden, violent pounding on the main workshop door downstairs. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was a battering. The sound echoed up the stairs. A rapid, angry thump, thump, thump that rattled the cups in my cabinet. It sounded like someone was trying to break the door down. It sounded like an emergency. I put down my coffee mug, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. I walked to the small landing at the top of my stairs, which had a peephole that gave me a wide-angle view of the main entrance below. I pressed my eye to the cold glass. My stomach dropped. It was them. My mother, Diane, her face pale and tight with fury, her expensive wool coat pulled haphazardly over her clothes. My father, Grant, standing just behind her, his face flushed a dangerous, blotchy red, his chest puffed up with blustering offense. My sister, Brielle, looking immaculate as always in a cream-colored peacoat, her arms crossed, glaring at the door as if it had personally insulted her. And next to her, looking profoundly uncomfortable, was a man I'd only seen in photographs. He was tall, with dark hair, and wearing an elegant cashmere jacket that probably cost more than my first truck. Logan Pierce. He wasn't pounding. He was just there, his eyes scanning the industrial street, his hands jammed in his pockets. I took one, slow breath, my shop, my territory, my rules. I walked down the metal stairs, my work boots ringing on each step. The sound was loud in the quiet shop. I reached the door, unlocked the heavy-duty deadbolt, and pulled the steel door open. My mother didn't wait for an invitation. She stormed past me, her heels clicking angrily on the concrete floor. She didn't look at my workshop, not at the strings of lights still hanging from the rafters, not at the clean tables, not at me. She just spun around and launched her attack. "What did you say to your Aunt Ruth? What did you tell them?" Her voice was a low, shaking hiss, all the politeness from the phone call gone. "The entire family is calling me. My phone has not stopped. They think we're monsters." My father barreled in right behind her, jabbing a thick finger in my direction. "Do you have any idea the position you've put us in? Phoebe? The sheer embarrassment? I had to spend all of Thanksgiving morning explaining to your grandmother why you were too sensitive to come. You've made us look like fools. You've shamed this family." Brielle drifted in last. She positioned herself near Logan, her face a perfect mask of wronged innocence. She let out a long-suffering sigh, clearly for his benefit. "I told you, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with faux pity. "She always does this. She has to make everything a drama. She just can't stand it when she's not the center of attention." I just stood there, my hands still on the doorknob. The four of them were clustered in the middle of my workshop floor. They looked alien. They looked like intruders. They had brought all their Maple Grove poison into my one safe space. I hadn't said a single word. I was still trying to form one. But before I could, the man in the cashmere coat, Logan, stepped forward. He had been silent, his eyes moving around the space. He wasn't looking at the leftover party. He was looking at the shop. I saw his gaze travel over the high ceiling, the professional-grade rigging points, the heavy-duty fabrication table, the massive, custom-built breaker panels and distribution boards that lined the far wall. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and analytical. Then, those eyes landed on me. He wasn't looking at me like I was a grease-covered mechanic. He was seeing me. He tilted his head, his brow furrowing. His intense gaze silenced my mother mid-rant. "Wait," he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a plasma torch. Everyone froze. He took a step toward me, his eyes never leaving my face. You're Phoebe Collins?" The room went completely, utterly silent. My parents just stared, confused by the question. Brielle let out a nervous, tinkling laugh. Yeah, Logan. This is my sister, Phoebe, the one I told you about, the handy one." She said handy like it was a terminal illness. Logan didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on me. He shook his head. Slowly, a look of dawning, stunned realization spreading across his face. "No," he said. "I mean, are you Phoebe Collins? From Iron Ridge Workshop?" He pointed to the small, faded logo I'd painted on the brick wall behind my desk. Are you PC Systems?" My blood went cold, absolutely cold. The two halves of my life, PC, Systems, the anonymous professional, and Phoebe, the family screw-up, had just slammed into each other, right here, on my workshop floor. He was standing in Iron Ridge Workshop. He had seen the name. He had put it together. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Once, Logan's face went through 3 distinct emotions in less than 2 seconds. First, pure, unadulterated shock. Then, dawning comprehension. Then, a dark, cold anger that made my father's blustering look childish. He turned, not to me, but to Brielle. His voice was no longer quiet. It was sharp, professional, and deeply, personally offended. "You didn't tell me your sister was PC Systems." Brielle's face crumpled in confusion. "What? What does that mean? She's just an electrician. Logan, she fixes things." "She fixes things?" Logan repeated, his voice incredulous. He gestured, not at me, but at the entire high-tech workshop around them. "This is Iron Ridge? This is her? Brielle, my firm, Northline Capital. We are the primary financial partner for the Sterling Heights Gala. I have personally reviewed every major vendor contract. We approved the budget for the power and lighting design because of the reputation of PRC Systems, because of her blueprints." He jabbed a finger toward my office. "You didn't think that was worth mentioning?" My mother, seeing she was losing control of the narrative, jumped back in. She let out a sharp, scoffing laugh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Logan, you're exaggerating. She's an electrician, a tradeswoman. She got a little lucky with one festival, that's all. It's not a real company." Logan turned his gaze on my mother. It was the first time in my 30 years that I had ever seen anyone look at Diane Collins with anything other than polite agreement or mild fear. He looked at her like she was a complete and total idiot. "Mrs. Collins," he said, his voice dangerously level, cold as steel. "With all due respect, you have no idea what you're talking about. Just an electrician? PC Systems is the firm that designed the entire grid for Luminous Harbor. I have event producers on 2 different charity boards who only use her. They call her the Ghost Electrician. She is the electrician that half the event industry in this state is fighting to get on their call sheet. Your daughter," he pointed at me, "is the one person who is guaranteeing our gala doesn't black out." He turned back to Brielle, who looked like she had been slapped. "You told me your sister was a little rough around the edges. You told me you were embarrassed by her. I watched them. I just stood by the door and watched my family. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw it. Pure, unadulterated panic. My father's red, angry face had gone pale and slack. My mother's mouth was open, clicking shut, then opening again. No sound coming out. Brielle was visibly shaking her head, tears of pure rage and humiliation welling in her eyes. her perfect PR mask shattering. The hierarchy they had built for 30 years, the one where Brielle was the star and I was the stagehand, it had just been publicly, expertly, and completely inverted. And the inversion hadn't come from me. I hadn't said a word. It had come from him. It had come from the golden son-in-law, the man of finance, the prominent partner, the very person they had tried to protect from my shameful existence. He was looking at me, the ghost, the spare part, with a look I had never, ever seen from anyone in my family. He was looking at me with awe. The silence in the workshop was a physical thing. It was heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. My father's face was a mask of stunned, pale confusion. My mother's mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. Brielle looked like she had been physically struck, her perfect, tear-streaked face frozen in disbelief. Logan's words, "Half the event industry in this state is fighting to get on her call sheet," hung in the air, echoing, refusing to be dismissed. My father was the first to reboot. He was a man who hated any situation he couldn't control, and this one had gone completely off the rails. He cleared his throat, a loud, rasping sound. "Well," he blustered, forcing a laugh that sounded like grinding gears. That's quite a misunderstanding. It seems we've underestimated you. Phoebe." He waved his hand dismissively at Logan, as if to say enough of this nonsense. "But that's not really why we're here. We have a family matter to discuss." The pivot was so fast it was almost comical. Logan's revelation wasn't a moment for celebration or apology. It was a nuisance. It was an inconvenient distraction from the real agenda. "A family matter," my father repeated, his voice shifting into its serious, "I am the patriarch" tone. He stepped forward, trying to reestablish his authority. "Phoebe, your mother and I, we have a problem at the house. I just waited. I didn't make it easy for him." "It's the city," he said, his voice dropping. "They sent an inspector. You know how these people are, always looking for a problem. He's written us up." He was avoiding my eyes, staring at a coil of cable on the floor. Something about the old wiring, the outlets in the original part of the house, he called it a significant fire hazard. "It's ridiculous. The house is fine." I knew exactly what he was talking about. Their house was built in the 1950s. It was still running on the original knob and tube wiring. I had told him for 10 years it needed to be replaced, that it was a tinderbox. He had always said it was too expensive. "The inspector is coming back," my father finished, finally looking at me. "Before Christmas, he says if we don't have it brought up to code, he's going to fine us, or worse." He mentioned something about condemning it. Then my mother, having found her voice, chimed in. She saw her opening. The "Phoebe is useful" button was right there, flashing, and she was going to press it. "It's just a piece of paper." "Phoebe," she said, her voice sliding into a honeyed, manipulative sweetness I knew all too well. "You're so good at this stuff. You could come over. Just for a few evenings. This week. You know, snip some wires, put in some new plugs, and then you could just, sign the paper for the inspector, tell him it's all fixed." I stared at her. She was asking me to commit a felony, to falsify a permit, to put my master license, the one I had bled for, on the line for the house I wasn't even allowed to eat in. "It'll save us a fortune," she said, as if that settled it. "Your family, after all, you'll help us." It wasn't a question. Before I could even process the audacity of that, Brielle stepped forward, her face reset. The shock was gone, replaced by a look of calculated, bright-eyed opportunity. She saw an opening, too. "And speaking of helping," she said, her voice light and breezy, as if we were all just pals. "Phoebe, you're obviously doing really well. This PC systems thing, this gala. I mean, Logan just said, your budget is huge." She laughed, a tinkling, false sound. "It's just, as the PR lead, I'm under a lot of scrutiny. I have to look the part, you know? Image, it's everything. She gestured to her own expensive coat. I have to hire a stylist and get some new outfits and the decorations. My personal budget is just, well, it's terribly tight. She smiled at me, a wide, predatory smile. I was thinking, since you're already getting paid so much by the gala anyway, you could just advance me a little to help me out, for the good of the family, say $5,000? There it was, the complete set. My father wanted me to commit a crime, risk my license, and rewire his house for free. My mother wanted me to lie to a city inspector. My sister wanted $5,000 so she could buy new clothes. They stood there, all three of them, staring at me with the same look of blank, cheerful expectation. They had just found out I was successful, and their immediate, unanimous reaction was, "What can we get?" They didn't ask if I had time. They didn't ask if I was willing. They treated my time, my company, my license, and my bank account as a shared family resource, a checking account they had all just discovered a huge, unexpected deposit in. I looked past them, at Logan. He was standing by the door, his face pale. He was silent, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. He was a man who read contracts for a living. He had seen my proposals. He knew my rate. He had probably seen the line item I include in all historic retrofits. Hazard pay for pre-1970 wiring. He knew exactly what they were asking. They weren't just asking for a favor. They were asking for tens of thousands of dollars in free, dangerous, illegal labor, and a $5,000 cash bonus. I took a breath. I listened to the high, quiet hum of the fluorescent lights, my lights, in my shop. Then I spoke. No. It was one word. It was quiet. It wasn't a yell. It wasn't a scream. It was flat, and cold, and final. The reaction was instantaneous. It was like I had detonated a bomb. What? My mother's voice was a sharp, offended gasp. She physically recoiled. What did you just say? My father roared, his face instantly turning that blotchy, dangerous red again. A daughter does not say no when her family is in trouble. After everything we've done for you. I told you, Brielle shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's selfish. She's always been selfish. She's ruining everything. No, I said again, louder this time. My voice wasn't shaking. I was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. Let's talk about everything we've done. Let's talk about the last 10 years. I looked at my father. I have done your maintenance, free of charge, for a decade. I was the one on your roof in that hailstorm last summer, replacing shingles, while you drank lemonade. I'm the one who paid the $800 bill to the roofer for the supplies. I'm the one who rewired the furnace when it died 2 winters ago, so you wouldn't freeze. I turned to my mother. I'm the one who has paid your overdue electric bill 3 times, so you wouldn't be embarrassed by a shutoff. I'm the one who has fixed every light, every switch, every single faulty appliance in that house. A house you just told me I am not good enough to have a meal in. I looked at Brielle, who had gone silent. And I'm the one who paid the deposit on your first PR-worthy apartment, because you couldn't be bothered with a roommate. I let that hang in the air. I have saved this family from fines. I have saved you from fires. I have saved you from freezing. I have given you my time, my money, and my skills, for free, for my entire adult life. And in return, I was uninvited to Thanksgiving because my work boots, the same boots I wore to fix your roof, would embarrass your new boyfriend. I looked at all 3 of them. Their faces were blank with shock. This was not in the script. No. Here are the new terms, I said, my voice as cold and clear as the beam from my flashlight. No, I will not come over for a few evenings. I will not commit a felony by lying to a city inspector. I will not risk the license that I, and I alone, earned. And Brielle. I locked eyes with her. I will not be giving you 5,000 cents, let alone $5,000, for your image. I walked over to my desk and picked up a business card. I walked back and held it out to my father. Here is my card. This is Iron Ridge Workshop. You are in desperate need of a full house electrical rewire. My company can do that. We are, as Logan pointed out, the best. My office manager will be happy to send you a formal quote. It will be expensive. It will be the same price I would charge any other client. If you accept, my crew will be there. We will do the work. We will pull the proper permits. And we will sign the real paperwork when the job is done. But the free ride? It's over. My father just stared at the card as if I'd tried to hand him a snake. That, a new voice cut in, is the bare minimum she should be offering. We all turned. Logan, he had been silent, but he was silent no longer. He stepped away from the door, into the center of the confrontation. I have seen the invoices from PS Systems, he said, his professional boardroom voice filling the shop. I have seen the liability riders. What you are asking her to do is not a favor. It's a multi-$1,000, high-risk, unlicensed job that could get her sued, fined, and stripped of her ability to earn a living. And I honestly, he looked from my mother to my father, have no idea why any of you would even think she owes you that. That was it. The betrayal was complete. The golden boy had sided with the ghost. My mother's face collapsed into a mask of pure reptilian rage. The perfect hostess was gone. This was the real Diane Collins. You will regret this, Phoebe, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. You think you're so big now? You're nothing. You're a greedy, ungrateful child, and you will come crawling back. You're ungrateful, my father yelled, finally finding his footing in pure, simple anger. After all we gave you, a roof over your head, you're a worthless, ungrateful daughter. Brielle was just screaming, a high-pitched, incoherent sound. You're ruining it. You're ruining my life. You're ruining my relationship. I hate you. I hate you. And with that, the three of them turned, as one, and stormed out of my workshop. They nearly trampled each other getting out the door. They slammed it so hard the metal frame shrieked in protest. I just stood there in the sudden, echoing silence. Logan was still there. He looked at me, his face a complex mask of apology, embarrassment, and something else. That respect. I didn't look at him. I just walked to the door. My legs suddenly feeling like they were full of wet cement. I reached out, my hand visibly shaking, and I grabbed the heavy deadbolt. I turned it. The thunk of the bolt sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I leaned my forehead against the cold, steel door. I was shaking. My whole body, from my knees to my shoulders, was vibrating. It wasn't from fear. It wasn't from sadness. It was the feeling of a 30-year-old high-voltage cable, stretched to its breaking point, finally being cut, and for the first time, I could feel the electricity, my own power, flowing exactly where I wanted it to. I was free. The days after the confrontation were, inside my own head, remarkably quiet. The shaking stopped, replaced by a cold, steady hum of focus. I had work to do. The Sterling Heights Gala was a monster of a project, and I threw myself into the schematics, calculating cable runs and generator loads. My phone, blessedly, was silent. But the spiral had already begun elsewhere. The dominoes I hadn't pushed, but had simply refused to hold up any longer, were starting to fall. It started a few days later. On Monday morning, an email landed in my inbox. It wasn't from a client. The subject line was, Urgent. Notice of violation and escrow. 452 Maple Grove Drive. It was from the City Code Enforcement Office. It seemed my father, in his initial panic weeks ago, had given the inspector my name and my company's license number as his retained electrician. It was a desperate, foolish attempt to make the problem go away. Now, I was officially on their list. The email, from Inspector Rodriguez, was blunt. Following a failure to respond to the preliminary warning, it read, and a formal complaint from a neighbor regarding a sparking exterior utility box. The property at 452 Maple Grove Drive has been escalated to high-risk status. All knob and tube wiring requires immediate permitted replacement. Failure to comply within the posted timeline will result in mandatory condemnation of the structure pending repairs. My father must have received the same email, because my phone, which I had muted, began to light up on my desk, vibrating itself into a frantic dance. It buzzed once, twice, 10 times. I finally picked it up, a wall of notifications. 7 missed calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, a string of increasingly hysterical text messages. Mom, Phoebe, you have to call me. This is insane. They are threatening to throw us out of our house. Mom, how can you let this happen to us? After everything? Dad, you did this. You and your selfish pride. This is your fault. Mom, you are a cruel, evil daughter. You are trying to destroy this family. I read the last message. You are a cruel, evil daughter. I looked at it for a long time. Then I powered my phone off completely. I went back to my blueprints. Later that night, I turned it back on. There was a single, new voicemail. It was from Aunt Ruth. Phoebe, honey, it's me. Call me back, please. I'm worried. I dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. Oh, thank God, she breathed. Are you all right? Your mother? Phoebe. She is losing her mind. She's in the family group chat right now, telling everyone that you are letting them be thrown out onto the street. She's saying you're doing it, on purpose, that you want them to be homeless for Christmas. I leaned my head against the cold steel of my workbench. Aunt Ruth, I said, my voice flat and tired. I'm not doing anything. I just told them I wouldn't work for free anymore. And I told them I wouldn't commit a felony by falsifying permits for them. There was a long, dead silence on the other end of the line. A felony? She finally stammered. Falsifying permits? Diane didn't mention that part. No, I'm sure she didn't, I said. She wants me to rewire the house, for free, off the books, and then sign my master license on a lie to the city, saying it's all up to code. I told her no. I told her I would be happy to send Iron Ridge Workshop over to do the job properly, with a contract and a permit, just like any other client. Another, longer silence. Oh, my heavens, she said, her voice faint. A contract. You just asked them to be a customer. That's it. She's telling everyone you're demanding tens of thousands of dollars to change a few light bulbs. She's saying you're extorting them. That's her version, I said. The truth is, I'm just not being their tool anymore. Phoebe, she said, her voice firming up, a sudden note of steel in it. You don't owe them this. You paid for their roof last year. You've paid for more than your share. You don't owe them another thing. That phone call was the second domino, the narrative my mother had tried to build. Phoebe, the evil daughter, suddenly had a powerful competitor. Phoebe, the professional, and Grant and Diane, the liars. The family group chat, which my mother had used as her weapon, fractured. Aunt Ruth, it seems, was not shy about correcting the record. My cousin Mark texted me privately. Wait, I'm confused. Aunt Diane said you refused to help, but Aunt Ruth says you just want them to pay for it, like a normal person? My Uncle Ben, the one from Thanksgiving, apparently replied to the whole group. Are we talking about the same house that Phoebe saved from that electrical fire 5 years ago? I remember that. Grant was out of town and she was there all night, and now she's evil for not wanting to do it again for free? Suddenly, everyone was remembering. The Phoebe the Martyr story from Thanksgiving was getting a sequel. The Phoebe the Shame narrative was dead. While my family was imploding, the gala was accelerating. We were 2 weeks out, and the pressure was immense. I got a panicked call from Mark, the event producer. Phoebe, we have a problem, he said, sounding like he hadn't slept in a day. The fire marshal. He just did his final walkthrough of the Sterling. My stomach tightened. What's his problem? He's not happy, Mark groaned. He's an old-school guy, and he sees our tech rider, the moving lights, the broadcast trucks, the video walls, and he's terrified. He said our temporary power load is reckless. He won't sign the final event permit unless the entire temporary power system is inspected, approved, and personally signed off on site, by the lead electrical contractor. He's demanding a face-to-face. I sighed. That's standard. Mark, I'll handle him. No, you don't understand, Mark said, his voice rising. The hotel engineer is backing him up. He's nervous too. He told the marshal he is only comfortable with this level of power if P.O.C. Systems is the one managing it. He's seen your work on Luminous Harbor. He told the marshal, and I quote, "If P.C. Systems walks, I'm pulling the plug on the whole event." So, Phoebe, you're not just a contractor anymore. You're the linchpin. My entire event rests on you, personally. My anonymity was gone. The ghost was being called onto the stage. An hour later, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Phoebe Collins?" "Phoebe, it's Logan Pierce." His voice was crisp, all business. "Mark just looped me in on the fire marshal's demand. My partners at Northline Capital are concerned. A failed inspection this late in the game is a catastrophic liability. We need your absolute assurance that this permit will be signed." "It will be, Logan," I said, my own voice matching his. "This is what I do. I handle fire marshals every week. I'll schedule the walkthrough. I'll show him my schematics. I'll show him the load calculations and the redundancy systems. He'll sign." "Good," he said. He sounded relieved. There was a sharp exhale. The business part of the call was over. There was a pause. "Phoebe," he said, and his voice changed completely. It lost its boardroom edge, becoming softer, hesitant. I just wanted to say, about the other day, at your shop, I am profoundly sorry for how they spoke to you, about your work, about you." "You don't have to apologize for them. Logan," I said, my hand tightening on the phone. "I know," he said. "I know I don't, but I was there. I brought them to your door. And I've never seen anything like it. What you do, the business you've built, it's incredible. They don't see it, and they should." "Thank you, Logan," I said quietly. "Now, I have a gala to save. I'll have my office schedule the meeting." I hung up. My new, highly visible role as the gala savior did not go unnoticed. Brielle, who was CC'd on all the high-level production emails, finally saw the name, not just PC Systems, but Phoebe Collins, lead engineer, PC Systems, on an official meeting schedule with the fire marshal, the hotel, and the primary sponsors. She went nuclear. Mark called me back 2 hours later. His voice no longer panicked, but bewildered and furious. "Phoebe," he said, "I have to tell you, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. Your sister, Brielle, she just called me, directly." "And?" I said, bracing myself. "And she tried to have you fired," he almost yelled. "She told me you were dangerously unprofessional and unreliable. She said you had severe family problems and were a major legal liability to the event. She said she was not confident in your ability to deliver. She even had a replacement company, some friend of hers, ready to go." My blood went cold. What did you say to her?" Mark let out a short, harsh laugh. "What did I say? I told her that she was out of her mind. I told her that her replacement company couldn't power a high school prom, let alone the Sterling Gala. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that P. Systems was the only reason the hotel and the fire marshal were even considering this event, and I told her that if P.C. Systems walks, the gala is canceled, and her PR firm would be the one explaining that to Logan Pierce and the entire board of sponsors. She hung up on me. Her desperate, last-minute power play had backfired. She had tried to oust me, and in doing so, had only revealed to the entire production team that I was the one holding all the cards. I was now, officially, untouchable. The fallout from this was immediate. Brielle must have told my mother. My mother, in turn, heard from her society friends on the gala committee that Phoebe Collins, not P.C. Systems, was being praised in hushed, awed tones as the genius who is saving the event. To my mother, this was a conspiracy. The world, which she had tried to shape, was defying her. The child she had labeled shameful was being publicly celebrated. The child she had labeled golden was being shut down. Her system was broken. And as her social world crumbled, her physical world followed. The first big storm of the winter hit, a cold, driving rain that lasted for 2 days. The roof at 452 Maple Grove Drive, the one I had patched but warned my father needed a full replacement, finally gave up, and it gave up in the worst possible spot, right over the dining room, the room with the perfect table. Water began to drip, then it streamed. It ran down the antique chandelier I had refused to fix. It pooled on the expensive new dining table they had bought to impress Logan. It soaked the image-perfect beige carpet. Within a day, the smell of damp plaster and, soon, the sharp, sour scent of mold began to fill the main floor. They were trapped. The house was now actively, visibly, and smellably falling apart. My father, stubborn and proud, still refused to call a professional contractor. He thought a roofer was too expensive. He knew I was too expensive. They were still waiting. They were waiting for me to break, for the good daughter programming to kick back in, for me to see the picture of the ruined dining room and come running, tools in hand, crying. I'm sorry. My phone remained off. My door remained locked. Then, the final domino fell. The city inspector, having received no reply to his high-risk email, and likely spurred by another call from the neighbor, came back. He saw the new, active water damage on top of the old, faulty wiring. He saw the mold. He deemed the structure not just high risk, but immediately hazardous. I got the call from Aunt Ruth. She was crying. Phoebe, they got the notice, the final one. He taped it to their front door, a big, red sign. What does it say? I asked. 10 days, she sobbed. They have 10 days to remediate both the roof and the electrical, or the city is condemning the main living area. They'll have to move out. They'll be homeless. She took a gasping breath. Phoebe, the 10-day deadline? It's the day before the Sterling Heights Gala. They were out of time. The two Phoebe problems, the collapsing house and the high-stakes gala, were now on a collision course. They had to face the truth. They needed me, and not the useful daughter. They needed PC. Systems. The text messages of cruel, evil daughter stopped abruptly. The flood of angry voicemails ceased. For 2 full days, there was nothing. A dead, unnerving silence. I knew this wasn't peace. It was a retreat to re-strategize. Then, on Wednesday, a new message appeared on my phone. It was from my mother. Phoebe, honey, I know we've all said things we don't mean. Things have been so stressful. Your father and I would like to have you over for a nice pre-Christmas dinner this Friday. Just a few close family members. We all want to talk things over, calmly. Please come. We love you. I read the message once, twice. We love you. 3 words I hadn't heard from her, not genuinely, in what felt like my entire life. It was a trap. It was the most obvious, poorly baited, clumsy trap I had ever seen. The nice dinner was a hearing. The close family members were a jury, and talking things over calmly was the final desperate attempt at a public ambush, to shame me into submission. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Aunt Ruth. You got the text, didn't you? She said, her voice low. The one about the nice pre-Christmas dinner? I replied, staring at the message. Phoebe, don't you dare go. It's an intervention. But they're intervening for the wrong person. What have you heard? I heard the whole plan from your Uncle Ben, who your father tried to recruit, she said, her voice laced with anger. This isn't a nice dinner. This is their last stand. They're going to get you in that room, in front of your grandmother and all of us, and humbly ask you to save the family home, your father's words. They're going to talk about tradition and family honor, until you agree to do the work. And the illegal part? They're not calling it that. They're calling it helping out. Signing a paper for your old man. Ben told me they're absolutely convinced that you won't be able to say no to your father's face, in front of your grandmother. They're staging an execution. Phoebe. And you're the one on the block. I stood up from my desk. I looked at the wall of schematics for the gala. The inspection with the fire marshal was tomorrow. The gala was in 6 days. The condemnation notice for my parents' house was in 5. You're right, I said to Ruth. It is an execution. So you're not going. Good. Just stay away. No, I said, a sudden cold resolve hardening in my chest. I'm going. Phoebe, no, why would you walk into that? Because, I said, turning to my filing cabinet. They're right about one thing. It's time to talk things over, calmly, in front of the whole family. But I'm not the one who needs to be worried. After I hung up, I did not go back to my blueprints. I went to my office computer. I opened my personal accounting software. I opened my bank statements. I went to the filing cabinet where I keep my old checkbook registers and receipts. For the next 2 hours, I prepared. I was not walking into an ambush. I was walking into a hearing, one that I had just been invited to, and I was going to bring my evidence. I printed out the invoice from the roofing company from last summer, the one for emergency storm tarping and repair, $6,400. Beside it, I printed the bank statement showing the electronic transfer from my business account to pay for it. I printed out the 3 separate urgent disconnection notice emails from the Westbridge Utility Company, the ones my mother had forwarded to me with, Phoebe, handle this. I printed the 3 corresponding online payment receipts. Total, $1,228. I printed the tuition payment confirmation from 2 years ago. The one for Brielle's final semester at her private university, the communications degree. My parents' investment. I had paid the final $5,000 installment, a loan to them, because my father's bonus hadn't come through. It was never paid back. I kept digging. I found the receipt for the new transmission in my mother's minivan. 3 years ago. The receipt from the tailor for her $2,000 mother-of-the-bride dress for my cousin's wedding, which she'd borrowed from me and forgotten to repay. One by one, I printed them all. I didn't do it for repayment. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because my father, my mother, and my sister had crafted a flawless narrative of me as the ungrateful child who they had given everything to. I was about to show them the ledger. I 3-hole punched every page. I put them in chronological order. I slid them into a 1-inch black binder. On the spine, I printed a simple label. Collins family, shared expenses. This was not an attack. This was the truth. This was my boundary, written in black and white, with dates and dollar signs. On Thursday, I had the inspection. The fire marshal was exactly as Mark had described. Old school, grizzled, and deeply skeptical. I walked him through the Sterling Heights ballroom. I didn't try to charm him. I just spoke his language. Marshal, I said, I understand your concern. The load is massive. But here's the redundancy. We're not pulling from the hotel's panel at all. We have 2-megawatt generators, synchronized, running in parallel. This line here, I pointed to my blueprint, is our primary feed. This second, completely separate line, is our hot backup. If the primary feed fails, my auto transfer switch will kick the backup on in less than 200 milliseconds. The band won't even miss a beat. I showed him the grounding. I showed him the cable runs, all rated for 50% above our maximum calculated load. I showed him my team's safety certifications. He looked at my blueprints for a full 5 minutes, silent. He traced the lines with his finger. Finally, he looked up at me. He nodded. Once. That's a hell of a plan, Collins, he grunted. You're not leaving me any room to argue. He pulled out his pen and signed the permit. Don't make me regret this. You won't, Marshal. That evening, the night before the family dinner, my phone rang. It was Logan. The gala is officially green-lit, he said. His voice sounded tired, but relieved. The board is... They're ecstatic. You're a miracle worker. Phoebe, I'm an electrician. Logan, I just did my job. Right, he said, with a small laugh. Well, thank you. He paused, and the business tone evaporated. Listen, I heard about the dinner tomorrow night. My hand tightened on the phone. How did you hear about that? Brielle, he said, and his voice was heavy. She told me about it. She said it was a family reconciliation and that I should be there. She still thinks we're a team, that I'm going to back her play. Are you? He was silent for a moment. No, I'm not, Phoebe. My relationship with Brielle, it's over. I haven't officially ended it, not yet. I've been trying to get through this gala. But that day in your workshop, I saw who she is. I saw who they are. I can't be a part of that. The way she talks about you, the way she dismissed your work, after she knew what it meant to me, to the gala. I can't be with someone who has that kind of poison in them, that kind of entitlement. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I'm sorry, Logan. That's complicated. It is, he agreed, which is why I'm calling. Are you sure you want to go tomorrow? Are you safe? Because from what I've seen, that's not a family, it's a firing squad. I looked at the black binder sitting on my desk. I'm safe, I said. I'm not going there to apologize. Logan, I'm not going there to negotiate. I'm going there to give my closing statement. I'm going to put the truth on the table, in front of my grandmother and my aunt, and I'm going to walk away. One last time, on my terms. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear him breathing. A closing statement, he said, a note of that awe back in his voice. Okay, I get it. He took another breath. In that case, if you don't mind, I'd like to be there, too. Why? I asked, genuinely surprised. It's not your fight. Because, he said, his voice firming up. Brielle invited me. She expects me to be on her side. She's going to use my presence as a weapon against you. I think it's time she found out whose side I'm really on. And frankly, I want to be there, as a witness. Friday night, I drove my truck, not my work van, to Maple Grove. I parked down the street. I didn't feel fear. My heart wasn't pounding. It was slow, steady. It was the calm, focused hum of a transformer under a full, stable load. I grabbed the black binder from the passenger seat. I walked up the cracked pathway to the house I grew up in. I rang the doorbell. The door was opened by Brielle. Her PR smile was plastered on, wide and brittle. "Phoebe, you came," she gushed, as if she were greeting a celebrity at a step and repeat. "Everyone's in the dining room." She turned and I followed her in. The house stank, the smell of stale water, damp drywall, and the unmistakable, sour-sweet stench of black mold hit me like a physical wall. They had tried to cover it with scented candles. It just smelled like moldy, artificial vanilla. I walked into the dining room. The perfect table was hastily set. A cheap, vinyl tablecloth was pulled tight over the surface, clearly to hide the water-damaged wood beneath. In the corner of the room, on the new, bubbling parquet floor, sat two large, aluminum turkey roasting pans to catch the drips. The ceiling above them was a grotesque, pregnant bulge of yellowed, damp plaster. The close family was all there. My maternal grandmother, looking frail and confused, Aunt Ruth and Uncle Ben, who both looked at me with open, painful sympathy, my cousin Mark. And at the table, sitting side by side like a king and queen, were my parents. And next to them, his face a perfect neutral mask, was Logan. "Phoebe, sit, my father boomed, his voice a tidal wave of false hospitality. He pointed to the empty chair directly across from him, the hot seat. I sat. I placed the black binder on the table in front of me. Brielle, my mother, and my father all eyed it, but didn't ask. Logan saw it, and a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of understanding passed between us. My father stood up, a glass of wine in his hand. He launched into his pre-rehearsed speech. "Thank you all for coming," he started, beaming at his small, captive audience. "Family. That's what this is about. Family is. It's about sticking together, through thick and thin. We're not perfect, but we are a unit. And sometimes a family faces challenges, an inspection, a big gala, big important things, and that's when a family has to pull together. That's when we have to put aside our little disagreements and remember who we are." He looked at me, his smile full of what he thought was paternal warmth. It looked like a threat. "We don't abandon each other," he said, his voice dropping. "When the chips are down." He sat down. The room was silent. Then my mother took her cue. She leaned forward, her hands clasped on the vinyl tablecloth. She didn't look at me. She looked at the whole table, at the jury. "Your father is right," she said, her voice thick with staged emotion. "This family, this house, is facing a real crisis. That inspector, he doesn't understand. He's threatening to take our home, the home you children grew up in." She finally turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were wide, pleading, and completely false. "Phoebe, we know you're busy," she said, loading the word with a dozen different meanings. "But you've always been our fixer. You've always been the one who could help when the furnace broke, when the roof leaked." She took a shaky breath, a perfect performance of a mother on the edge. The drips from the ceiling, 1, 2, 1, 2, into the aluminum pans in the corner, were her soundtrack. "We have 5 days. Phoebe," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We're your parents. This is your home. You're not going to let this happen to us, are you?" The entire table turned. Every pair of eyes, my grandmother's, confused, my aunt's, angry, my father's, demanding, Brielle's, triumphant, all of them. They all stared at me. The trap was set. The question was asked. The silence stretched, waiting for the good daughter, the spare part, the fixer, to do her job one last time. I let the question hang in the air. A sour note in the moldy room, the sound of the drip, plink, plink, into the aluminum pan was the only sound. All eyes were on me, waiting for the good daughter to fall into the trap. I didn't answer my mother. Instead, I placed my hands on the black binder in front of me. I slid it to the center of the vinyl tablecloth. I rotated it so the spine label, "Collins Family, Shared Expenses," was facing my father. "Before we talk about family, I said, my voice quiet and clear, let's talk about the facts." My mother's pleading face tightened. My father's eyes narrowed. I opened the binder. The first page was a copy of an invoice from Westbridge Roofing, dated last July. "Emergency storm tarping and repair," I said, my voice resonating in the damp room. $6,400. And here, I tapped the next page, is the bank statement from the Iron Ridge Workshop business account, showing the transfer to the roofer. I paid that. I turned the page. Westbridge Utility Company, disconnection notice, May last year, $412. Disconnection notice, September, $380. Disconnection notice, January of this year, $436. Total, $1,228, all paid by me, from my personal account, so you wouldn't have to be embarrassed. I turned the page again. Brielle's final tuition installment, the one you loaned from me when Dad's bonus was late, $5,000, never repaid. I turned the page. The transmission for Mom's minivan, 3 years ago, $1,800. Mom's dress for Cousin Sarah's wedding, the mother of the bride dress you had to have so people wouldn't think we were poor, $2,000, paid for on my credit card. I kept turning, page after page, a quiet history of financial rescue, a secret ledger of their irresponsibility and my silence. My aunt and uncle were leaning forward, their faces pale. My grandmother was squinting, trying to read the numbers from across the table. My father's face was turning a deep, dangerous purple. Brielle looked like she was going to be sick. I closed the binder. The sound was a soft, final thud. "I don't regret doing any of that," I said, looking right at my father. "I did it because I thought that's what family does, but I'm not doing it anymore. I will not be performing unlicensed electrical work. I will not be committing fraud by signing a false permit. I will not risk my license, my business, and my future to continue propping up this pretense." My father exploded. He shot up from his chair, his hands slamming onto the table, rattling the wine glasses. "You owe us!" he roared, his voice cracking, spittle flying from his mouth. "You owe this house. I gave you life. Your mother and I. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us." The ancient, primal trump card. I gave you life. I didn't flinch. I looked at him, my voice as cold and steady as a grounding wire. "I am very grateful to be alive, Dad, but gratitude is not a blank check. It does not mean I have to set myself on fire to keep you warm. It does not mean I have to risk my entire career, my health, and my financial stability to cover for your irresponsibility, year after year." My mother, seeing my father's rage was failing, tried his tactic. She turned to the jury, to Aunt Ruth, to my grandmother. "Do you see?" she cried, her voice a desperate, theatrical wail. "Do you see what she's done? She's been keeping a ledger, like a cold-hearted accountant. She's been holding it against us, as if we're just customers." He's right. The voice wasn't mine. It was Logan's. Everyone froze. Logan had been silent, a statue. Now, he spoke, and his voice was calm, hard, and cut through my mother's hysteria like a diamond blade. "I've seen the inspector's report for this house," he said, his voice pure, analytical boardroom logic. "I saw the one for the gala. This isn't helping out. The violations here they are catastrophic. The inspector isn't threatening. He is, by law, required to condemn this structure. It is a death trap, the combination of knob and tube wiring and active water leaks. I'm surprised it hasn't burned down already." He looked from my father to my mother, and no one, not one person in this room, has the right to ask Phoebe to perform that kind of work, for free, off the books, and illegally sign her name to it. You aren't just asking her to help, you are asking her to personally and legally assume all of your liability, simply because she's your daughter. He used their language. Liability. Legally. Assume? My parents just stared at him, their faces blank. They didn't understand the words. But Brielle did. She finally understood she had lost him. The PR mask didn't just crack. It shattered. She launched herself out of her chair, her face a grotesque mask of rage, tears streaming down her perfect cheeks. "You're siding with her?" she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Are you crazy? She's just the dirty girl, the girl with the wires. I am the one who brought you here. I am the one who is building a brand. I am your girlfriend." Logan looked at her, and for the first time, I saw sadness in his eyes. Not anger, just a deep, profound pity. "No, Brielle," he said quietly. "You're not. I'm siding with the only adult in this room. I'm siding with the person who knows what a boundary is. For the last 2 weeks, I have watched you use your sister as an endless open bank, and then, I watched you try to hide her from me because you were ashamed of the very work she was doing to save your event, the work that I admire." He shook his head. "That is not family, Brielle. That is exploitation." "Then leave," she screamed, grabbing a napkin and throwing it at him. "Leave. Go and worship her. If you think she's such a saint, then go." It was her last bullet, her final trump card threat. It backfired. Logan looked at me. His face was calm. He spoke clearly, in front of everyone. "Phoebe, I am deeply sorry for any part I played in bringing this to you. Our gala will, of course, continue to use PC systems. It would be an honor, if you'll still have us. But as for this family, I don't think I'm a part of it anymore. From the end of the table, my grandmother, who had been silent, nodded once. She leaned over to Aunt Ruth and whispered, her voice just loud enough for the quiet, stunned room to hear. The one who knows how to say no to being used, that's the one who's finally grown up. Aunt Ruth nodded, and Uncle Ben crossed his arms, looking at my father with open disgust. The audience was gone. My parents were alone on their sinking, moldy stage. I stood up. I picked up my black binder. I didn't come here to fight, I said. I came here to say this, in front of witnesses, so we are all perfectly clear. I looked at my parents. I am not fixing your wiring. I am not giving you any more money. I am not your shield, and I am not your scapegoat. My answer is no. If you need an electrician, you can call one. If you need a roofer, you can call one, but you cannot call me. I turned to my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother. My voice softened. If any of you ever have an electrical issue, if you need a safety inspection, you call Iron Ridge. I will be there. That's my job. I will be happy to do it. But it will be under a contract. It will be with a permit. It will not be because I'm ungrateful. My mother's face was white. She had one card left to play. The final curse. If you walk out that door, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous snake, don't you ever come back, you hear me? You walk out on this family. You are out. For good. She thought it was a prison sentence. She thought it was the one threat that would finally make me fold. I looked at her. I saw her. Really saw her. For the first time. Not as my mother. Just as a desperate, terrified woman in a rotting house. I pulled on my jacket. Mom, I said, you just gave me the one thing I've always needed. I turned to Logan. I have work to do at the shop. The gala is in 6 days. You're welcome to come by. Or not. I'm fine either way. Logan stood up without a moment's hesitation. He looked around the table. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I will have my assistant send you a list of licensed, bonded, and insured electricians in the West Bridge area tomorrow morning. I suggest you call them. Brielle. Goodbye. He turned, and he walked with me, out of the dining room, out of the smell of mold and vanilla, and out the front door. I stepped out onto the porch. The air was frigid. It was so cold my breath plumed in a white cloud in front of my face. It was the cleanest, sweetest air I had ever tasted. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I walked to my truck. Logan walked with me, in silence. We got in. I drove away from Maple Grove. I didn't speed. I just drove. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. We drove to Iron Ridge. I got out, walked to my door, and slid the key into the heavy deadbolt. I pushed the door open. The shop was dark. It was cold. It was empty. I stepped inside. I walked to the main panel, the one I had built with my own hands. I flipped the first breaker. Click. The string lights I had hung for my Thanksgiving, the warm, golden Edison bulbs, flickered to life, filling the huge, cavernous space with a soft, steady glow. I stood there, in the middle of my floor, in the warm light, surrounded by my tools. I was not a spare part. I was not a ghost. I didn't need a seat at their table. I had built my own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. And please, subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it some extra love by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.